Monday, September 10th, 2018, meeting of the Falls Church City Council. We are delighted to have you here with us this evening. I would ask if you could please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That was good. All right, Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Yes. Ms. Conley?
Here.
Mr. Duncan?
Here.
Ms. Hardy?
Here.
Mr. Lickenhouse?
Here.
Mr. Snyder?
Here.
Mr. Z?
Here.
And Mayor Tarter.
Here.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you. All right, do we have a motion regarding the meeting agenda?
Mr. Mayor, I move to adopt the meeting agenda.
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, the ayes have it. So welcome to you all. We have a busy night, particularly of proclamations and special presentations. We have a lot of honored guests here this evening, so we're happy that you all were able to make it out this evening. Our first proclamation is going to be read by Councilman Duncan regarding Charles Langalis. And so, Mr. Duncan, would you do the honors, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's a great honor to read this resolution about Charles, with whom I served on the Transportation Committee many, many years ago. This is, and we're pleased to have his daughter here with us tonight. This is a memorial resolution honoring Charles R. Langalis. Whereas the community lost a valuable and cherished citizen and volunteer with the passing of Charles Langalis on July 4th, 2018. And whereas Mr. Langalis, who was born on May 19th, 1930 in Port Washington, New York, had a long and distinguished career in the federal government. And whereas he received the Central Intelligence Agency's Career Intelligence Medal for exceptional achievements over his 35-year career with the agency. And whereas Mr. Langalis served the country at postings in Central America, South America, the Caribbean, Western Europe, and Sub-Saharan Africa. And whereas Mr. Langalis was an active volunteer and member of the community, including participating with the Falls Church Democratic Party, membership on the city's Architectural Advisory Board and Citizens Advisory Committee on Transportation, and serving as a Spanish language interpreter for both the Falls Church Housing and Human Services Office and Legal Services of Northern Virginia. And whereas as a member of the Citizens Advisory Committee on Transportation, he was a great champion for making the city more walkable, and he shared his lifelong experience as a visually impaired person to be a tremendously effective advocate for making city sidewalks and streets safe and accessible for all. And whereas Mr. Langalis was a much loved and respected by his family, friends, and community, whereas the City Council agrees to adopt this resolution upon reading.
Now be it resolved that the City Council of the City of Falls Church, Virginia, recognizes with great appreciation the contributions of Charles R. Langalis over the course of his life and career, and offers sincere condolences to his family. So thank you so much. And his daughter, I understand, is in the audience. Would you like to come forward and receive this proclamation? You're welcome to say a few words as well if you'd like. I think everyone would like to shake your hand and honor your father's contribution. Thank you very much. Why don't you come for a picture?
Come back, let's get a picture.
Walk the road
She's actually talked to half the people in the room.
Come on up, we'll get a picture. I don't know where it is, but. All right, thank you so much.
My parents were long-lived lovers of Falls Church, and this really means a lot for me because they were both very involved in Falls Church. My mother was a librarian for, 16 years, and my father was very involved in the community, so I thank you very much for this.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I might just make a comment for the daughter of Charles Langalis. I had the opportunity to serve with Charles over a number of years, and there's a line in the proclamation that I think is particularly representative of his role here in the city, a tremendously effective advocate. He was always there, always had good ideas, always incredibly civil, and represented the very best of America and the best of our citizen activists. So we all have fond memories, and we all owe him a debt of gratitude. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Duncan, do you have anything else you want to say?
No, thank you, Elizabeth, for coming out. It's great to have a chance to reminisce a bit. Thank you.
All right, our next proclamation regards Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. Whereas every year thousands of children across America are diagnosed with cancer, an often life-threatening illness that remains the leading cause of death by disease for children under the age of 15. Whereas the causes of pediatric cancer are largely unknown, and though new discoveries are resulting in new treatments, this heartbreaking disease continues to scar families and communities in ways that may never fully heal. And whereas this month we remember the young lives taken too soon, stand with the families facing childhood cancer today, celebrate children who have triumphed over cancer, and rededicate ourselves to combating this terrible disease. Whereas thanks to ongoing advances in research and treatment, the 5-year survival rate for all childhood cancers has climbed from less than 50% to 80% over the past several decades. Whereas researchers around the world continue to pioneer new therapies and explore the root causes of the disease, driving progress that could reveal cures or improved outcome for patients. Now, therefore, I, David Tarter, Mayor of the City of Falls Church, Virginia, do hereby proclaim September as Childhood Cancer Awareness Month in the City of Falls Church and encourage the community to pay tribute to the courage and commitment of the families, friends, and professionals who lend their strength to children fighting pediatric cancer and moving us towards new cures, healthier outcomes, and a brighter future. So I understand we have a couple families. Would they like to come up, the children of the families, and receive this proclamation? We appreciate your strength and courage. All right, here we go. Come on up. All right, you guys. Come on up. All right. Come on up some more, you guys. Come on up, Jimmy. Hey, why don't you give everybody a quick handshake? All right, buddy. Here. How about a pin? You want a pin? Falls Church pin? Sure. Mia Grace, come on, honey. You're coming. You got to make the loop here. No, right up here. Yeah, there we go. Here you go. All right, here you go. How about a pen? You guys want some pen? How about a pen? Don't eat that. All right.
She's
All right, here, how about we get a good picture? You guys want to sit up here? Can we sit up here? You think that table will support them? No. All right.
Here we go. Perfect.
All right. All right. Thank you, guys. Sure. Do you guys, the rest of the families want to come up for a photo as well and join us up here?
Okay, wait, we're gonna go up together.
All right.
Come on, let's go.
We're all let Nader sit back there. Come on, Nader. Nice try.
All right. All right, you guys. Yeah, hang. Yeah, good stuff.
So, there we go. All right. There we go. Okay. Great. Cheese. Thank you.
All right. Thank you all. Our best wishes, of course. Our next proclamation relates to suicide prevention. And Vice Mayor Connolly is going to read that proclamation. Vice Mayor?
Proclamation declaring September 2018 as Suicide Prevention Month. Whereas suicide is the 10th leading cause of death in the United States and the second leading cause of death among people ages 10 to 24. And whereas for every reported death by suicide, there are approximately 12 documented attempts of self-harm. And whereas suicide is the most preventable cause of death and the vast majority of suicidal individuals display warning signs. And whereas public awareness of the warning signs and the networks available for at-risk individuals are needed to continue lowering suicide rates. And whereas community organizations and grassroots support are essential to continuing the fight against suicide and the loss of lives. And whereas reducing the stigma by discussing suicide and increasing the awareness of available resources for those suffering from suicidal thoughts is important to maintaining the health of our community. And whereas the City of Falls Church's Housing and Human Services Unit provides referrals to organizations that are dedicated to reducing the frequency of suicide attempts and deaths and soothing the pain for survivors affected by suicides. And whereas awareness of these resources saves lives and provides vital support to people facing life crises, trauma, and contemplating suicide by providing information, education, and support. And whereas CrisisLink provides free and confidential crisis and suicide prevention information and referral services through their hotline at 703-527-4077 or by texting CONNECT to 85511.
Now therefore, I, David Tarter, Mayor of the City of Falls Church, Virginia, do hereby proclaim September 2018 as Suicide Prevention Month in the City of Falls Church and commend CrisisLink for their work to prevent suicide in our community. All right. Would you like to say a few words?
Sure, just very briefly. I am Meredith Hovan. I'm the Director of Resource Development with PRS and PRS CrisisLink. And on behalf of the clients, most importantly, that we serve, the callers and texters that reach out to us, as well as our leadership and our board of directors, we sincerely appreciate that you recognize this month, but all throughout the year, the importance of suicide prevention and awareness. There are so many that are reaching out and finding hope when they reach out to the phone number that you indicated, as well as the text line. What some may not know is that the number that you see frequently now in the media, 1-800-273-TALK, that number is also being answered by your local crisis center, CrisisLink. So for all the media that covers that National Suicide Prevention Lifeline phone number, as well as the local number, your Falls Church community members are getting served by local community members themselves through the volunteers who are responding on our hotline and our text line. We respond and handle over 45,000 calls a year from Falls Church, as well as the greater Northern Virginia area. And drawing attention like this to Suicide Prevention Month is critical to making community members aware of the resource. One of the things that the council members have received today is a copy of our month-long activities for Suicide Prevention Month. We call our campaign Call, Text, Live, and it focuses really on building awareness and reducing stigma around suicide prevention. So thank you so much for the recognition of CrisisLink specifically this month.
Thank you so much for your good work in our community. If you'd like, we could hand you the proclamation and get a photo.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And I'm going to embarrass Sue Richter. She would mind joining me for these.
This is Sue Richter.
Sitting for us.
Yeah.
Or anyone else who would like to come up, please, as well.
Please don't call me after. I know, I've heard, so put her on the spot. Oh, that's good, okay. All right, give me 1 second, there we go. Thank you. Thank you all so much.
All right.
Hey, Mayor,
Our
just a
next
quick question.
proclamation relates.
Just a quick question. I assume our schools are well plugged into this effort, but I just want to make sure that they were doing something similar, or at least had access to the same resources for the guidance counselors and other folks. I guess
And I'm not sure I have an answer, we have an answer just yet, but
I
maybe
just saw
after the quote.
Greg Anderson and the school board member in there. I just want to make sure that our schools had access to a lot of the same information, both for the psychiatrists as well as counselors.
And I'm happy to go through Sue, but one of the resources that we really like to share are.
One of the resources that we provide throughout the county or throughout the community are wallet cards as well as magnets for counselors, teachers, anyone who's in the community who's serving others. So you can certainly work through Sue and we can get wallet cards to all of the schools if they don't already have them. But it's both with the text connect, the keyword to text us, as well as the hotline, both the local number and the national number. And I neglected to say, but I think it goes without saying, the text line is so critical for young people. They're not picking up the phone necessarily making a phone call, but texting is really critical, and we've seen the numbers rise because it's a resource that they're much more comfortable in accessing. So we can certainly get those materials through Sue.
Great.
I do know that those materials have been at the schools in the past, and we probably should check and make sure that they do
Absolutely.
not need a refresh, but I know that they have gone through my office and ended up in schools as well.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, thank you again. Our next resolution or proclamation relates to Indigenous peoples, and Ms. Hardy will read that proclamation.
Whereas the indigenous peoples of the lands that would later become known as the Americas have occupied these lands since time immemorial, and whereas the Commonwealth of Virginia is built upon the homelands and villages of indigenous people of this region, without whom the founding of the Commonwealth would not have been possible, and whereas many contributions have been made to our nation through indigenous peoples' knowledge, labor, technology, science, philosophy, and arts, and these deep cultural contributions have substantially shaped the character of the United States. And whereas the City Council opposes systemic racism towards indigenous peoples in our country, which perpetuates poverty and income inequality and exacerbates disproportionate health, education, and social instability. And whereas the City of Falls Church wishes to help close the equity gap for indigenous peoples through practices that reflect their experiences, ensure greater access and opportunity, and honor our nation's indigenous roots, history, and contributions. And whereas Indigenous Peoples Day was first proposed in 1977 by a delegation of Native nations to the United Nations sponsored International Conference on Discrimination Against Indigenous Populations in the Americas. And whereas the City Council wishes to encourage the community to reflect upon the many contributions as well as the continuing struggles of Indigenous peoples.
Now therefore, be it resolved that I, David Tarter, Mayor of the City of Falls Church, do hereby recognize Monday, October 8th, 2018 as Indigenous Peoples Day in the City of Falls Church, and direct the city manager to include this designation on city communications regarding the holiday designated on that date. Do we have anyone here who'd like to speak to this occasion? If not, I guess we can all celebrate it, and thank you very much.
Just wanted to call it that while we, I think, recognized it for the first time last year, I think this is the first year that we're going to recognize it as an official holiday in the city. And I think we are probably the second city in Virginia to do so after Charlottesville. So I think that's an important thing to do.
All right, and our last proclamation will be read by Councilmember Lichtenhouse.
Thank you. Whereas volunteer efforts strengthen and enrich the City of Falls Church, and these volunteers are selfless, energetic, creative, passionate, and professional. And whereas the Edward M. Kennedy Serve America Act, approved by Congress and enacted into law on April 21, 2009, designated September 11 to be observed as an annual National Day of Service and Remembrance. And whereas Day to Serve is an annual event that transcends political and religious differences to unite people of all faiths, races, cultures, beliefs, and backgrounds with a shared goal of helping those in need and improving communities. And whereas the Virginia General Assembly has designated each day from September 11 to October 11 as Day to Serve in Virginia. Whereas beginning on September 11, 2018, numerous service projects will take place throughout the City of Falls Church, many of which will last into October. And whereas on Day to Serve, individuals, faith groups, businesses, government agencies, and local organizations throughout the City of Falls Church are invited to support, participate in, or organize local projects to enhance the community and help those in need.
Now therefore, I, David Tarter, Mayor of the City of Falls Church, Virginia, do hereby proclaim each day from September 11th to October 11th, 2018 as Day to Serve in the City of Falls Church, and encourage our community to offer their time and talents and make an ongoing commitment of service. Do we have anyone who wishes to speak to this? Ms. Cram, welcome.
Hi. Thank you, Council. I really appreciate it, Mr. Mayor. Data Serve, I think this is our 6th year, and I want to thank Celeste and Veronica for getting it through at the last minute as I was working on some drafts, so I appreciate that. We have so many people who do so much in the city, as you all know from your own experiences. I'd like to recognize them and thank them for the days they serve throughout the whole year in various functions, and they have such wonderful capabilities that they direct toward something that they really want to see happen, and it makes Falls Church so special. And for those of us who serve with them and have a chance to work with them, it's really inspiring, and we think that believes with City Council. We know you all don't get a lot of money to do this, but it's really inspirational for those of us who know you all and know the amount of time and commitment it takes to serve. And likewise for people that volunteer for so many things throughout the city. And I see teachers spending a lot of time outside of their paid hours to do and help those that they work with to be a better citizen in the city of Falls Church. I'd like to thank the city for sticking to that, and all the years I've lived around here, it's been some 40 years now, it's been something that's really made the city unique to me and to those who come here. And I think that's something to be celebrated. And on September 11th especially, this is a time to draw together and remember all the goodness that we have, not only in our city, but our country. And I want to thank you all for that, and thanks for the proclamation.
Well said. Thank you. And you're a shining example of service to our community as well, so we greatly appreciate that. I don't know if you'd like to come forward and get a photo maybe with the proclamation.
Oh, sure, that'd be great.
Come on up.
On behalf of thousands of people, I'm not sure I can.
All right, well, I don't know if we got thousands, but if there's other volunteers or folks who'd like to come forward, why don't you all come on down as well? We can get the...
I get paid the big bucks.
Let's go. All right, you're the proxy tonight. Then. Come on, you get over here. No, not in the front. Well, great. Thank you. All right. And our last, I don't know if it's actually a proclamation, but it's an award we've won, which is quite impressive. I know the city manager, I guess, are you going to be presenting this? Mr. Z, I know had a big hand in what's getting this award, and well, okay, you're going to do it then. All right. All right, sounds good. Okay,
The Soul Smart Award.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, thank you for the opportunity to be here this evening. My name is James Schroll, and I'm with the Solar Foundation. I have the great honor and pleasure of presenting you and the city with a plaque for its Soul Smart Silver designation in recognition of its efforts to reduce local barriers to solar adoption. Soul Smart is a national designation program funded by the U.S. Department of Energy, and it acknowledges work in areas such as permitting, inspection, planning and zoning, among others. The city has cross-trained its permitting and inspection staff and supported a Solarize campaign in the city. This designation recognizes previous efforts to increase transparency by posting the solar permitting checklist to the website and allowing solar as a by right permitted use in the zoning ordinance. I would like to acknowledge Julia Philpott, who is a Soul Smart advisor for the city, for her efforts in helping the city reach designation. I would also like to thank Kate Walker and Doug Frazier, I don't think is here with us tonight, along with the rest of the city staff for their efforts. So I would like to once again thank the city for its designation, for joining hundreds of other cities, counties, and towns across our nation that have been recognized for their efforts to reduce barriers to solar. So congratulations.
Congratulations. Thank you so much. It's a great honor.
May I add just one thing there? Thank you very much. But we were just talking about volunteers, and volunteers, of course, have been very important in this too, particularly Tim, with his leadership on energy transition in the city. So I think that's worth adding there.
Well, thank you. Thank you for adding that. Mr. Z, I think, would like to say a few things.
That's a nice-looking plaque. I think it's one of the bigger ones we've received, one of the bigger awards. It'll look very nice in our trophy case in our new City Hall. SolarSmart is a national designated program designed to recognize communities that have taken key steps to address local barriers to solar energy and to foster the growth of mature local solar markets. We want to thank James Schroll, SolarSmart, and the Solar Foundation and its partner, ICMA, the International City County Management Association, for the silver designation. We especially want to applaud the leadership of Doug Frazier, Director of the Department of Building Safety, and Kate Walker, Department of Environmental Sustainability, and of course, Bob Lazaro of NVRC for making this award possible. In getting this award, we've had to show that we've eliminated paperwork, red tape, and other burdensome requirements that increase costs and discourage solar companies. Since our government has direct influence over the prospects for solar energy and installation and growth, in qualifying for SolarSmart Silver, we've met prerequisites in planning, zoning, development regulations, and inspections, as well as additional points across all of the categories. In short, the designation announces that our city is open for solar business. We join more than 200 communities, municipalities nationwide with SolarSmart designation, and I'm proud to say that Falls Church is the only community in Northern Virginia with a silver designation. And we want to recognize Fairfax City, Arlington, and Alexandria counties with their SolarSmart bronze designations. Already we have or will shortly have 4 recent major developments in the city that are installing solar or will be solar ready. Significant numbers of our citizens have put residential solar arrays as part of the Solarize Virginia campaigns. The solar industry is a leading source of American job creation, with over 250,000 solar workers, 150,000 in the past 8 years alone. So, for the Solar Foundation, we look forward to working with our team partners with deep expertise in solar energy and local governments, including Solar Schools research guidance for schools going net zero energy. And we are also interested in the Civic PACE program for property assessed clean energy financing. Again, thank you and congratulations to all of us. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you all, and thank you, Dan, for your leadership in both our community, the region at COG, and also at VML on a state level. So we really appreciate that. Why don't we get up for a picture? Yes, indeed, we'll do a picture. And we've also got, is Tim Stevens here still? There we go. Come on up, and anyone else who's had some involvement, why don't you come up for the picture as well?
Now they can smile, right?
Great. Yes. Thank you.
All right. Thank you much. Congratulations to all. All right, Madam Clerk, do we have any oaths of office to administer?
No, sir.
All right. Well, let's move on to the receipt of public comment. Can you summarize the written comments we've received?
Yes, we actually had 2 comments since the last meeting. Cindy Wackerbarth of 304 Walnut Street provided some site plan comments for the Founders Row project, and John Tepperman forwarded an article about providing hydrogen fuel pumps.
All right. Thank you very much. Now we'll move on to the receipt of public comments. I don't recall seeing any comment slips, but anyone in the audience who would like to speak or address council, you're welcome to do so. We ask that you fill out a pink speaker slip in the back of the room, hand them to the clerk, who will and then in turn hand them to me. We also ask that you state your name and address for the record and keep your comments to 3 minutes. I don't have any speaker slips. Is there anyone in the public who wishes to speak? All right, we're going to keep moving. You will have an opportunity later on as well if you missed a chance just now when the item's called. Are there any council requests? Does anyone have any requests? All right, let's move on to the report of the city manager, Mr. Shields.
Thank you, Mayor Tarter, members of council. There's just three things I'd like to report on. And I'll end with a report on flooding, an update on the report that I gave last week on the flooding that we experienced over the Labor Day weekend and our preparations for the upcoming potential region-wide event of Hurricane Florence. But before I get to that, I did want to note that Doug Frazier, the city's building official, has let us know that after a review of our building code effectiveness by the Insurance Services Office, ISO, the city has maintained its current very high classifications for building code effectiveness. We have a classification of 2 out of, the classification goes from 1 to 10, with 1 being the highest. And so we're class 2 effectiveness for commercial and industrial properties, and class 3 effectiveness for residential properties. And what the reason that these essentially the audits of our building code enforcement practices are done is that building codes do have a very marked influence on the well-being of a community, on its resilience and recovery from natural disasters. The data shows that communities with effective building code enforcement are more resilient to fires, high wind events, and other natural disasters. And so I want to thank Doug Frazier and the whole building code team for their hard work and for maintaining those high ratings. It also has a direct impact on homeowners because homeowners insurance, the private industry tends to look at those ISO ratings as one of the inputs when they set fire and other homeowners insurance for properties in the city. So that was the first thing I wanted to report on. The second thing is the council's next meeting is scheduled for next regular meeting on Monday the 24th will be a special meeting, joint meeting with the school board. The plan is to have that as an evening meeting outdoors at the Tenor Hill Historic Site, and the intent is to have a meeting that is outside of the budget process, a chance for both the city council and the school board to discuss some of the work that is going on right now, top priorities, and key challenges and goals that we're all working towards over the coming years. And the goal is to have that outside of a direct budget discussion so we can really inform each other and also, I think, have a good understanding of what it is we're trying to accomplish, what the big picture is. Of course, then we'll have our normal budget planning session, which will come in November as a follow-up to this. But this is sort of a general tone-setting meeting to acknowledge a lot of the big projects and big challenges that we're working together on over the coming 2 years. Lastly, a report on the flooding. At our last meeting, I gave the council a report on the Labor Day flooding that we experienced on Friday night and Saturday night 2 weekends ago. Since that time, we have been regularly meeting with citizens who are impacted by that flooding event. We've been checking on the status of our pipes. We've been discussing the causes of the flooding, doing some assessment, and communicating with citizens. And speaking with our peers also with Arlington County and Fairfax County, what we believe happened on both Friday night and Saturday night were very rare and very intense rainfall events. Both of them related to a slow-moving summer thunderstorm with extremely localized effects. We did have water overtopping the Van Buren Street near the new Van Buren Bridge. Arlington County also reports water overtopping the Wilson Bridge just downstream on the same 4-mile run branch. While at the same time, in the larger 4-mile run watershed, there were some areas that got very little rain at all. So it was a very localized and very intense event. We estimate that we received over 3 inches, just over 3 inches of rain in under an hour, which is a very low probability rain event in the city of Falls Church. Most recently, we had a meeting with neighbors who live along the Harrison Branch, a 4-mile run. It was a Friday morning meeting. There were a lot of questions from neighbors there. That seems to have been sort of the locus of the most intense rainfall in that sub-watershed of 4-mile run. And we discussed the causes. We discussed some of the neighbors' concerns about things they'd like us to follow up on. One of those things is there were questions about the Van Buren Bridge. People had not seen it overtopped before. And as part of our process in building a bridge, it is a requirement by the Federal Emergency Management Administration, by FEMA, that we not change the dynamics of the floodplain. So it's incumbent upon us to do a post-construction study to confirm that we didn't change the floodplain. But given the concerns about that aspect of the project, we're choosing to hire an independent firm, not the firm that designed the bridge, but rather have a third-party review of the flow characteristics of the bridge, just so we can get to those answers. We do have a capital project plan for the Harrison Branch, which will daylight a portion of that stream, which will increase its conveyance capacity. We've had numerous neighborhood meetings about that, but we'll have an update meeting on that. Similarly, on the Renz Branch, which is one sub-watershed over, we have a project to increase conveyance there. That's in the design phase. And then the next step is, as we work through the list of 43 projects that are in the watershed management plan, given the events of Labor Day, we will be assessing the schedule of those projects, and we'll be getting back with the neighbors on possibly on changing some of the priorities of the projects that are in the watershed management plan. Our goal with all these flooding events is to learn from them, to work with the community so that we're more resilient and that work together so that for future rain events, hopefully people are better prepared, the city's better prepared, and damages are lesser in the future than they are than what we experienced then. We do expect that with a changing climate, that these types of micro bursts, essentially, of rainfall will become more common, and that just needs to be part of our emergency planning. I think that's a segue now into what we're looking forward to this coming weekend. And Ms. Mestre, I think there's 2 graphics that I'd like to put up. And actually, if you could start with the other one of the track of Hurricane Florence. So this is the current imagery of the tropical wind forecast for Hurricane Florence. So what the current projections are for is hurricane force winds building to Cat 4 and hitting the coast of North Carolina on the Thursday time frame. The tracking for the storm, I think there is pretty good consensus now on this track. It's a fairly tight agreement on the different models up to landfall. As you can see, we are not in the high probability zones for high tropical force winds, but we'll continue to monitor that as the week goes on. That could change, but that's the current projection. And now if you'll go to the next slide, this is the projected rainfall amounts, and this is what we're watching and planning for most closely at this point. What is anticipated is that Hurricane Florence will make landfall, will go inland, and then stall. And that is essentially what happened with Hurricane Harvey in East Texas last year. That is a worst-case scenario for inland flooding. So the red bands is the projected zone of about 15 inches of rain in the North Carolina and Central Virginia area. Now these projections can change, and we'll watch them very, very closely. Currently, we're on the line between the 6 inches of rainfall and 4 inches of rainfall projection. So this is obviously a multi-state event. And we're planning for the potential for wind damage. We're also planning for the potential for very heavy rainfall. With a hurricane, you can get those intensities where bands of rain come through that can produce local flooding. We have been working on public communications really since last Friday and trying to get information that people can use to help them prepare for the event. Emergency preparedness is a community effort. The latest is a press release that went out just before this meeting that has tips but also useful information, and we'll continue to get that information out as we get closer to the weekend. Just a couple of notes from this. We do have lots of public events planned for this weekend. Our anticipation is on Wednesday we'll make the call for any postponements or a rescheduling of the Fall Festival, the Cherry Hill Park opening ceremony, Farmers Market, and other events. Will probably those decisions will be made closer to the weekend. We are currently in the process of filling sandbags, which will be available for homeowners. Our plan is to make about 2,000 sandbags. We're asking people to limit themselves to 20 sandbags or less so that we can spread those out to as many people as possible. And we'll get more communication out on that as well. We have numbers in this for who to call for power outages. Of course, you're supposed to call Dominion Virginia Energy. We'll be publicizing that number. And if a tree falls or if you're experiencing something that is a storm-related event but perhaps doesn't rise to a 911 call, you can always call the police non-emergency number to report flooding or a tree down that's not causing immediate risk or danger to life. And the police non-emergency number is 703-248-5050. We're listing here 5053, which is also a number, but 5050 I think is the easiest to remember. We also have tips on what things people can do just to prepare and make their homes ready for what could be a long duration wind and rain event over the weekend. So our goal also is to we're taking time with Public Works right now to check all of our stormwater facilities. We'll be checking gutter pans. We ask homeowners not to put lawn debris or other things in the gutter pan ever, but particularly this week to keep it out so that if we do have heavy rain, it won't clog up the storm system. I'd be happy to answer any questions on those items. And
I've got
yes.
just a couple questions, Mr. Shields. Just since that image is up there, because you made a comment about the localized flooding that we had, I think 3 inches, I guess, in less than an hour. The amount of rainfall that we see there, is that in aggregate over the length of the event? What is that in terms of timing, just for folks that are looking at that map online and have just heard the story about the localized flooding here? Do you know?
Right. Well, I think that with 4 to 6 inches of rain, that would likely be over a 4 to 6 hour period for a hurricane. However, there could be bands of really intense rain. So Hurricane Isabel, just as an example, that was about a 12-hour wind event and rain event. But we did have these bands of intense rainfall, and it did cause flooding in the city. So
Okay.
that could happen with this as
Have
well.
have we been in touch with local shelters around the area that and to prepare them for at least communication to some of the homeless that we have here in the city and the surrounding areas?
That's a good point. We are in touch with those, and Nancy Vincent is here in the room, and I think that is part of our checklist of things for when we have a hurricane coming or a blizzard coming, something that you can plan ahead for.
Okay. And then in terms of shelter here that's provided by the city, emergency shelter for folks that may not be able to be in their homes for whatever reason, if a tree falls on it or there is intense flooding where they can't stay in their home. Is that something that'll be communicated so folks can go to those facilities and wait out the worst of it?
Yeah, we've got work to do on that. and we'll have more communication on that as we get closer to the weekend. One thing that I think is reasonable to expect is the Red Cross is probably going to be fully occupied, and so if we stand up a local shelter, it needs to be staffed by local volunteers, now most likely not by the Red Cross. And so we're working on that problem, and we'll have more information.
Okay.
As we go
I'd
forward.
personally be willing to help out on that if we need that. So.
Thank you.
Questions? Come, Mr. Z.
You mentioned that we were doing everything we can to make sure that the gutter pans and the storm drainage system are clear, and I assume that includes any construction work that's going on to have these filter pigs in the drainage system that will all be removed so that they don't back up.
That's correct, and I should have noted that. We have 25 grading plan level projects happening in the city right now. Each one of those, they will remove the gutter buddies, we call them, and get them out of the street for this event. We will also be doing inspections of every construction site in the city to make sure they're buttoned up for both debris, for wind damage, but also for soil and erosion.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you so much. A Cat 4 event has a maximum wind velocity of 150 miles an hour. We certainly don't really expect that here, but even as it degrades, we do expect a significant microbursts, micro events. It could be fairly significant. In your guide here, it says if a tree falls, call the police non-emergency number. Now, what is it that we can expect that call to provide? Any kind of immediate any kind of assistance, or is it just a matter of notification?
We will go out when a tree has fallen. We will go to the scene immediately. If the tree is in the street, then we will secure it and then remove it, do traffic controls. If the tree is on the house, then we will provide aid to the best extent we can to the family. The building official will go to do an inspection. Sometimes the house needs to be condemned until it can be stabilized. If the tree is involved in power lines, and this is really important for the public to know, one of the first things we will do for any tree down is we'll assess, is it involved in power lines? And if it is, then we will mark it off, cone it off, keep people away from it, and we will not remove the tree. Dominion Power is the only ones who will remove a tree that's involved in power lines.
And lastly, in my collection of vehicles, I have a Ram 1500 4x4 pickup truck, and I would like to volunteer that if you need that. Thank you.
All right, Ms. Hardy.
Thanks, Wyatt. I think this preparedness tips are really helpful. I think we probably have a sense of where the low-lying, at-risk households are. I wonder whether we can get the message out about sandbags out to them more specifically, because I think those can really be helpful if they know that they're likely to flood, and we know probably those areas near streams and whatnot. I think people can certainly spread the word via social media and press releases, but I think if we can just get a flyer to them somehow, I think that would be really helpful in being prepared.
All right, any other comments? If not, thank you very much for that update. We'll obviously stay tuned and ask that everyone else do as well.
Yeah. All right.
Did you have anything else, Mr. Shields?
No, sir.
Okay. So, Madam Clerk, we ready to continue on?
Yes, I believe the next item is the update on the RFDP.
All right.
For this, Carly Aubrey, our project manager for the West Falls Church Economic Development Project, will give the public and the council an update, a briefing on the two proposals that were received in response to the city's request for detailed proposals. And so I will turn it over to Ms. Aubrey, and we'd be happy to answer any questions after this short presentation.
Good evening, Council. Oopsie. On June 15th, the requests for detailed proposals were issued, and on August 29th, we received two proposals. The executive summaries of these two submittals are on the city's website. The first one is the submittal by EYA, P.N. Hoffman, and Regency. And this is a picture of their conceptual site plan. And you can see along the bottom is Route 7 and Haycock Road. And then I've indicated the locations of the schools and the Virginia Tech site. So their proposed uses in here are a grocery and restaurant anchored retail mix, and the grocery and restaurant are about 10% of the total project square foot. Approximately 391,000 square feet would be Class A commercial office space. There would be a hotel designed in tandem with a civic space or music venue. There'd be approximately 288 multifamily apartments, 245 for sale condo units, and of those residential units, approximately 31 would be set aside for ADUs. There's also a senior housing component to this project of 150 to 200 units, and they're proposing nearly 1 acre of open space, which is primarily in that linear park in the center of the 10 acres. The second proposal was from Rushmark, and this is their conceptual site plan. You can see the high school and middle school at the top left, and then UVA on the side, Virginia Tech. They have primarily about 3/4 of an acre of open space in the center. I feel like should have a thing here, but I don't. You see that open space there? Okay, yes, thank you. So they are proposing approximately 148,400 square feet of Class A retail anchored by 45,000 square foot grocer and 38,000 square foot gym. Approximately 151,000 square feet of Class A office space, 153 room full service hotel, approximately 750 apartments, 120 for sale condo units, and of those approximately 57 would be affordable housing units. And then, as I mentioned, the open space would be about 3/4 of an acre. Currently, the two proposals are being evaluated by the evaluation committee. They are taking the month of September to review these and should have a selected proposal recommendation to council in October. There's 3 major categories of evaluation factors that they are considering: the value to the city, the development program, and the project execution and risk, and these are detailed in the RFDP. The value to the city category includes sub-factors such as land compensation and reasonableness of development assumptions. The development program includes factors such as achievement of the required uses, sustainability, placemaking, and coordination and communication. And then the project execution and risk includes sub-factors such as reasonableness of development timeline, alignment of timing for the phasing with city goals, and a financing plan. So that's the summary of the proposals, and I can answer any questions.
All right, thank you very much. Are there any questions? Okay, Mr. Duncan.
I've only had a chance to look at the summaries online, and so not in detail. The number of housing units for each one, could you just reiterate that? So the EYA plan has 288 multifamily apartments, 245 for sale condos, and then in addition, 150 to 200 senior housing units?
Correct.
So that's a total of about 733.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Rushmark plan has 750 plus 120, so that's a total of about 870.
Correct.
And the ADU percentage for each of those projects in total is?
They're both about 6%, 6 to 7%.
Okay, thanks.
All right, any other, Ms. Hardy?
I was just going to add that when I did the math, I think it was for the EYA project, it was not 6% if you count the senior project, the senior housing.
Correct. The 6% is just on the multifamily and the condos.
Got it. And I think on the Rushmark one, I got like 6.5%, including the condos, right?
Yes.
So slightly different math. A question related to that. Does either the online version or the redacted ones include unit types and the details of what those units look like?
Yes.
All right. Unless there's anything else, thank you very much for the update, and we expect further updates as we go along, and appreciate your good work. All right, Madam Clerk, do you want to go on to the next item?
Yes, we have TR 18-36, resolution to adopt a 2018 update to the affordable living policy.
All right, welcome, Ms. Lewis.
Good evening. So I'm back, and tonight we are, after our discussion last week at work session, we are asking council to refer the proposed update to the 2013 Affordable Housing Policy to boards and commissions. And we would like to allow for a public comment period from September 10th, 2018 to November 8th, 2018. And then we'll schedule a public hearing and final action for November 26th, 2018. So we have incorporated some of the changes that council suggested, and so you have that in front of you. And so at this point, we're ready to send it out to boards and commissions and to get their feedback.
All right, thanks very much. Do we have any questions or comments? Vice Mayor Connolly.
Ms. Lewis, as I said at the work session last week, thank you for all the work as the council liaison to this committee.
Thank you.
I was really impressed with the hard work that went into it. Mr. Litkenhouse was also a liaison, and Mr. Duncan attended many of the meetings. And Ms. Hardy is on the Housing Commission. So many of us have great interest in this. There was so much going on and so many opinions, and I'm really impressed that it all was just be able to be distilled down to this single document. So I thank you for the work, and I thank the members of the committee for that work as well.
Thank you.
All right, Ms. Hardy.
Great. Just a quick request. I wanted to make sure that in the boards and commissions referral, we also include the school board. I know that teachers, obviously, our population we care about, and we've heard from some of them in the work groups. I think I'd love to hear the school board's take on this too.
Absolutely.
All right, are there any other questions?
Just
or comments?
one quick
Yes.
question. After this goes to boards and commissions, what's the timing around this coming back to council?
Okay, so we're coming back November 26th.
November 26th.
So that will give us a good period of time to get, public comments, and we'll incorporate those comments and bring them back to you.
Great.
And we've gotten a lot of public feedback through the process.
All right, are there any other questions? Speaking of public did you have another question or comment, Mr. Duncan? You did? I did. Okay.
You want to
Good.
take public comment first?
No,
Mine are
is
more,
it comments or
mine are more
questions?
like comments and questions.
All right, well, let me go ahead and open it up to public comment. Is there any member of the public who wishes to speak to this matter? See, we've got one. All right. Ms. Hockenberry, when you're done, why don't you fill out a speaker slip, even though I know we know.
She was a member of our committee, by the way.
Okay, all right. Well,
Yes, as a matter of fact, I think this was probably the third committee I've served on to rewrite the affordable dwelling units. This seems to, in some ways, to be routine. I don't think it should be. I think we're getting to the place in our city where this is a crisis about having affordable living units and being able to have a diversity within our city and in our schools. We have only two remaining large affordable living, and that's the Cherry Hill, and that, they're still calling it Tyler Garden on a lot of maps. It's kind of weird. But, and then, of course, the Fields. The Fields, I would say that it would be a very good idea for our wonderful city staff that deals with housing, who are so knowledgeable, to be so vigilant and knowledgeable about that. There's only a few more years that's going to go under the same regulations it is now. If we were to lose that, I think it would be really a dreadful thing for the city because of all the, just flat the diversity. And I think we really need to look at this very, very seriously and be very much on board of knowing exactly what we can find out about any possibilities of that being sold or anything like that, because that's much bigger than I ever thought it was. And so And also, I think the council needs to continue looking at the difficulty of our older citizens staying in place here in the city. Because if you look on Zillow, the lowest market rate housing is about $650,000. And the highest are all in the millions, you know, and that is really like very, very, there's nothing. It's, you know, you have nothing to have for anybody with any lower income rate. And as we've found that our possibility of even having our affordable living units affordable has been very difficult because of the AMI and everything. So I think this has got, I hope we get some really good feedback on this, but I think it's something that's at a serious nature within our city. And I know that I think this is one of the best councils we've had for their knowledge and for their interest in having affordable living units and having the whole idea of affordability and sustainability and all kinds of wonderful abilities. And just thinking, you know, even the work session that I attended last week, just thinking of how close we came to having a whole residential unit for the affordability for our older residents, and it was cut down by council. And that will always be one of the most, you know, terrible things I've witnessed along the way. So we almost had that one, and we got to really make sure we do much better with our whole process of keeping diversity within the city.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your service on the work group. Yes, of course. Welcome.
My name's Ron Brusso, and I live at 607 Northwest Street. I'd like to support basically going ahead. I think this is an improvement upon the last the affordable housing policy that was approved in 2013. And I'm especially with those recommendations to increase the ADU amount from 6% to 8 to 10%. It is recommended where feasible, and to run the ADU covenant agreements to perpetuity, which is a very good advancement. And also to receive cash in lieu of ADUs if this is for perpetuity, because that is an important part, and if it's worthwhile for the city to accept the cash, which may not always be. However, I'd like to comment, and it's not again, but just to bring to your attention that what's not contained is the elephant in the room, and basically is the support of the fiscal resources of city resources into a affordable housing development. There's no promise to commit resources to the Affordable Housing Fund in any amount. There's no promise to partner with developers in either maintaining existing Winter Hill or committed resources or maintaining the Fields apartment. So there's no resources from the city invested anywhere in this. It comes all from the dwelling units and from anywhere else. This is totally different from our neighbors in terms of Arlington and Fairfax County and Alexandria. They all take resources from the city in significant amounts, not in total amount, but even in percentage amounts of what's in. And I think this is important. If the city is not a partner with its own resources in the building or in the partnership or in development of these, you cannot do it simply through ADUs and other aspects. So I hope that you consider this as you go along and have a commitment that we did not have in the other one in this new policy. I think it's got tremendous potential if the city is involved with its own resources. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak to this item? Seeing none, the matter is closed to the public, and we'll start with Mr. Duncan as to comments. Mr. Duncan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you to staff and all those who volunteered on the working group. It is a thorough product, and hopefully will lay a foundation for us to get something more significant accomplished in the area of affordable housing than we've been able to accomplish so far. Those of you who were here for the work session last week heard my remarks, which were bordered on the harangue So I'll not repeat those again, although I recommend them to Mr. Litkenhouse if you'd like to listen to the video. They were a rare treat, I know it'll be, to hear what I had to say. But in all seriousness, first, well, let me say first, I'm pleased that there's language here at the bottom of page 5 that suggests that the city will encourage new forms of affordable housing, such as mixed-use dedicated housing development that includes affordable housing and units for the elderly and disabled. Last week, I spoke to the point that many other jurisdictions around us seem to be doing deals where the private sector finds it in their interest to participate more ambitiously in providing affordable housing as part of broader redevelopment projects. I hope we can see the same here when this goes out to boards and commissions. I particularly hope the Economic Development Authority will take note and come to us at the end of the comment period with a strategy that perhaps deploys some of the resources that they have to do a deal somewhere that would move the needle on designated ADUs in a new project. If you look at the two proposals that we're considering for the West Falls Church Economic Development Project, the total, if you take the two of them together, the total number of ADUs is fewer than 100. It doesn't take any math rocket science to see that that is not anywhere near going to get us where it is that we say we need to go. We set a goal for ourselves of some 200 plus ADU set-asides in this document, and at the rate that we're going, which is 6%-ish or even less, we'd have to build 2,500 multifamily housing units to get to the 200-ish that we hope to add. I don't think that we're likely to build 2,500 housing units here in any kind of 5-year time frame. So I think we have to come up with more creative ways to try to bring the private sector into discussions that will enable us to yield some of the kind of numbers that we're seeing in Arlington and in Fairfax and in certainly some of the Maryland jurisdictions. Why? That language is in here. The why part is, because of our desire, as expressed in the vision document, to be a complete community. A full-service city implies that we are able to, provide housing for people who work at all levels, from the service sector all the way up to the higher income levels. And the benefits of that, workforce housing, teachers, public safety, the benefits of living in a community that can provide housing in those areas are environmental, they're educational, they're just quality of life. They're the kind of place that we want to be. They're what sets us apart as Falls Church from, other gated communities and jurisdictions. It's not like the birds are tweeting. Now that is a heck of a dial tone. And yeah, I may have bats in the belfry, but I don't have birds in my brain. At any rate, this 60-day period of time that we've got this out to boards and commissions is important because I want to hear from all the boards and commissions, but we need to come out of this comment period with a strategy, not just a document. As the document stands now, it is lots of good intentions and no particular strategy to get us to the numbers that we say we want to reach. If we cannot come up with a strategy, then I'm not sure that the document, let's just say that let's try to come up with a strategy. Because we don't want to convey to people that, we're all talk and no action. The thing that distinguishes the council in recent years, in my mind, is that, we identify problems and we go tackle them, whether it's school facilities, infrastructure for the city side, economic development, environment and energy. I think this council has an excellent record of not just talking and kicking the can down the road. We actually, we may not achieve perfection, but we have moved across a broad number of issues to make real progress. And I just hope that we can do that in this very important area, which has, a lot of energy and good intentions behind it, but needs some hard thinking from people, particularly here on this council, who know the area of economic development and housing and know that it is possible for us to do more in conjunction with the private sector. So thanks for your work and look forward to talking with you further.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you much, Phil. Other comments? Do we have any other comments? Okay, well, we did discuss this at length in our last meeting, so thank you again. We look forward
Thank
to
you.
hearing what the boards and commissions and community have to say and advancing this worthy cause. So thank you all who've done work on this so far, and we look forward to making some more progress when this comes back to council. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Look forward to
Great.
coming back.
Okay, and our next item, I think we go on to the consent agenda, if I'm
I
not
think,
mistaken.
Mayor,
we
I
have to
move to
vote.
refer TR 18-36 to
Oh, I'm
boards
sorry.
and commissions for comment, allow for a public comment period from September 10th, 2018 through November 8th, 2018, and schedule a public hearing and final action for November 26th, 2018.
Second.
All right, Madam Clerk.
And I have noted that the school board is part of boards and commissions. Ms. Conley?
Yes.
Mr. Duncan?
Yes.
Ms. Hardy?
Yes.
Mr. Lickenhouse?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Z?
Yes.
Mayor Tarter?
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you, council.
All right, well, now maybe let's move on to the consent agenda. Is there anyone who wishes to remove any item from the consent agenda? No? Okay. Mr. Shields, do you have anything to say about any of these consent agenda?
I'll just briefly describe them. The first is authorization of an expenditure up to $150,000 to Ardent Company LLC to fix the Hillwood and Annandale intersection, the signal that blew down in a storm. Half of the cost of this contract will be paid for out of underspending in the FY18 DPW budget, and the other half will be paid for from insurance proceeds for the loss of that light. The second item is the approval of the 2020 Community Services Performance Contract between the Fairfax Falls Church Community Services Board and the Commonwealth of Virginia Department of Behavioral Health and Development Services.
All right, do we have a motion regarding these items?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
Madam Clerk?
Ms. Conley?
Yes.
Mr. Duncan?
Yes.
Ms. Hardy?
Yes.
Mr. Lickenhouse?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Z?
Yes.
Mayor Tarter?
Yes.
Thank you, council. Motion carries.
All right, is there any business not on the agenda? Any standing regional committees, council liaison reports? Mr. Snyder?
Thanks very much. At last week's Northern Virginia Transportation Commission meeting, we heard a presentation from Jack Evans, the chair of the Metro Board. Everyone's very pleased that the three jurisdictions, in the case of Virginia, localities as well as the state, came up with the additional funds needed for Metro for their capital project. However, it may not come as a shock that there's some other work that confronts the agency. It's really in three areas. First of all, the red line, large segments of it needs to be basically encapsulated or otherwise prevented from leakage. The second one will be the need for additional capacity across the Potomac River in Arlington. The third being retirement benefits, which are not fully funded at this point. So there's going to be a lot of work that still has to be done with regard to meeting Metro costs. But I think it's also very clear that the Amazon HQ2 is a realistic possibility for this region, and that Metro is a key part of that possibility. So I wanted to report on that. Secondly, there is a regional component to emergency preparedness, and there'll be lots of regional coordination at all levels, at the operational level as well as the policy level over the course of this event. So the city is not alone, and this is where the region really functions very effectively as a region. Thirdly, the Transportation Planning Board, that's the region's board that is responsible for approving any federal projects, has a visualized 2040?
2045.
Yeah, program. So I will ask that Cindy and I work up some comments for the city council to take a look at on that. That's not just Northern Virginia. That's region-wide. I think those are the comments that I had. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does anyone else have anything?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick note about the legislative package, which I know we usually start working on a little bit later in the fall, but somehow the fall gets past us and all of a sudden we're, up against the deadline of what we submit to Richmond. Noting that the Virginia Municipal League Conference is at the end of September, so we have just one meeting here between now and then. That meeting might be an opportunity just to familiarize ourselves with what we have in our current package and get input from all members of council on what we might want to come to Richmond with in January. Also, Mr. Manager, was there a award ceremony that's anticipated for the city at the VML conference?
Mr. Duncan, there is, and I didn't note it during the manager's report because I knew we were going to have some opportunities to brag on this in the future, but let's go ahead and talk about it right now.
No, I don't mean to let the cat out of the bag.
The city put in 3 nominations for VML Achievement Awards this year. One for the historic preservation work with Northside Social, a second one for the work we're doing with the faith community, with schools, with city staff, called the First 14 Minutes for an active shooter type of scenario for training. And third, we put in an application for a curbside compost pickup program, which is one of the first in the state of Virginia. And for the compost program that we have, we've received both the Environmental Quality Award and the President's Award from the Virginia Municipal League, which is their highest achievement award. And so that will be recognized at the annual banquet at the conference coming up in October, and we're looking forward to that very much. So congratulations to Chris McGow and our whole Department of Public Works team, and to all of those citizens who've joined us in trying to have sort of the next frontier of being sustainable in our solid waste, of taking our food scraps and our compostables and diverting them so that they can be turned into black gold, which comes back to you in the form of compost that you can use to fertilize your tomato plants in your garden. But it's a great program.
All right, Mr. Z.
Thank you, Mayor. Last Thursday, the Legislative Committee for VML met. As you know, I represent one of 6 committees on the Legislative Committee. There are 3 items of interest to all of us here locally coming out of that meeting, and these are all fast-moving items. First one is that the state of Virginia, various actors are trying to improve the language regarding proffers throughout the state, so that at the very least communicating and discussion of proffers would not result in penalties going forward. So stay tuned for that. There is early imperfect language that's been written, and we expect that to be improved over the next month. The second one would be the issue of 5G towers and stations. Currently, the Virginia law provides local authority and a schedule of rates, for example, $1,000 going to the locality for each tower and station. The FCC is prepared to preempt all of this. They would reduce the amount to no more than 500 and per station, and the locality would no longer have the ability to state what would be preferable or desirable or permitted in terms of aesthetics or other kinds of things. There is a National League of Cities letter that's been prepared for local usage to send up to the FCC, and I urge us to take a closer look at that and join our neighbors in letting the Federal Communications Commission know that we're really unhappy about that. It would result in less revenues and, of course, no control. Lastly, along these similar lines, the Community Services Board funding has been pretty much wiped out. Fairfax Falls Church, the $4.8 million annual funding has been zeroed out, and even though that story is not completely told yet, the committee's going to meet again in a couple of weeks to try to decide what needs to be done, but it would be a tremendous blow to our city as well as Fairfax. The best case is that the funding could be restored in as early as 6 months if positive action is taken. Otherwise, the worst case is that the money is gone forever and we have to find a way to fund our CSBs, Community Services Boards. That's kind of it. I wish I had better news.
All right, you've been busy. Thank you much. Any other council member comments? See, we don't have any minute, Mr. Snyder.
Just very quickly, I wondered, as we have an election coming up, I'm wondering if the election board could speak to us about any additional resources that they need, or just to give us a summary in the future about how things are going and how, if there's anything in particular we need to prepare in view of the interference in our election process, happily, I think not here, but elsewhere. Thank you.
All right. Are there any other council member comments? Okay, we don't look like we have any minutes to approve. Is there anything else to be said tonight?
Mayor, move that we adjourn.
It's a good idea.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Are you going to have opportunity for further public comments? You indicated you might.
Well, I did ask for each different item. For example, like the affordable housing, I asked for people. If you'd like to speak, come on up and say your piece.
So my name's Stu Whitaker. I moved to Fairfax County in 1983, and I moved to Falls Church City just earlier this year. So I'm now a Falls Church City resident. I know some of the people here. I have a comment and perhaps a question as well. My particular interest has to do with transportation, and particularly public transportation, because of its environmental impact and social justice impact. And I've looked fairly closely at the plans for the BRT running up Route 7. And I think it's certainly relevant to the discussions about parking and the more people you can
So I'm afraid if you could say your name for the
Oh,
record again.
sorry. Hope I don't have to do the whole thing over again. Stuart Whitaker. Thank you. So in looking at the plans for BRT up Route 7, I'm concerned that the plan for BRT is to divert so that the BRT is going to stop at East Falls Church. And I think from sort of an economic and from a user perspective, what gets people on when they make a choice about what form and mode of transportation they're going to use, they evaluate cost and time. And so often public transit takes twice as long as it does to drive, and so consequently people are likely to get into the vehicle. So I would urge, and I would be interested to know whether or not that is still the plan, to your knowledge, that BRT is going to be diverted to East Falls Church. If it is, I think it's going to significantly detract from the utilization of BRT, because it's going to slow down transit along that the corridor. And I think in terms of encouraging more people to use BRT and to go through Falls Church, it'd be very important if BRT were to run directly down Route 7 without that diversion. So that's sort of a question. I don't know whether or not, or who on the council may be looking at that, but it's an issue that I would encourage the council to consider and to investigate.
Sure, we've spent,
Sure.
did you want to?
Are you finished? I just want to hear all
I am.
your comments first. Great. So,
Thank you.
So let me respond. Yes, the current plan does call for stopping at East Falls Church. That was a quid pro quo by the other jurisdictions to participate in this. And basically, the route would go from Alexandria up 7 to East Falls Church, up through our businesses on Washington, and then out Broad. It's also thought to be that it's very important to serve the Washington corridor businesses as well as the Route 7 businesses. Currently, I did ask about the status of this, and it is in engineering, and I look forward, you and I can sit down offline and talk more about it, but I have to be honest with you, that's the plan that will happen. I agree that in one sense it adds time, in another sense it adds a lot of riders. And that's thought to be important by the other, frankly, larger jurisdictions that'll have to carry the vast amount of the cost for this. So, but we can sit down and talk some more, and we can set up some meetings with the folks, and we can talk about travel time and other things like that. So pleased to do that. But thanks for the question. Very good one.
And Mayor, if I can, I'll pass on my business card and we can connect you to the staff that are working directly on this as a follow-up to Mr. Schneider's points as well. The Phase 2 engineering study is an important piece right now as we go through that public and technical analysis.
All right, well, thanks for coming out and for giving us your comments. Is there anything else, as we said, to be said, Mr. Z?
Mayor, move to adjourn.
All right, do we have a second? All right, well, it's all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned.
Okay, that'll work.
If I can give you the right one, one that's correct.